This isn't just a story about a village teacher. It's about betrayal, buried secrets, and a life that was never what it seemed. If you love true emotional stories that stay with you long after they end, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the twist at the end will change how you see everything. For as long as anyone in Willowbrook could remember, Miss Alice Merriweather had been the heart of the village. Her tiny cottage was draped in ivy, always warm with fresh scones and the scent of lavender, and stood just beside the old churchyard where the children played after school. She was the head teacher at the only primary school for miles around, graceful, kind, and firm when she needed to be. Mothers adored her, fathers respected her, children idolized her. Every May Day, she led the flower festival, her silver hair woven with daisies, her laughter echoing through the cobbled streets. She baked for fundraisers, organized food drives, and still found time to sit beside the elderly who had no one else. To everyone in Willowbrook, she was more than a teacher. She was a guardian angel in tweed. Then, one Monday morning, everything began to unravel. A stranger arrived in the village, a woman in her mid-30s with sharp cheekbones, city heels, and eyes that missed nothing. She didn't stop at the tea shop or nod politely at passers-by like newcomers were supposed to. Instead, she went straight to the parish office. Within hours, gossip began trickling out like rain through a cracked, "Alice Merriweather's not who she says she is," someone whispered at the pub. "I heard she changed her name years ago," said another. Something happened in London, something terrible. Alice felt it the moment she walked into school that week. A coldness, murmurs. The usual sea of children's smiles were still there, but their parents watched her differently now. Eyes cautious, lips pressed thin. She couldn't ignore it any longer when Mrs. Dalrymple, the school board chair, asked her to step into her office after lessons. "There's been a complaint," the woman said, avoiding Alice's gaze. "It's best if you take a leave of absence just until this is sorted." Alice's world trembled. A complaint? From who? But the answer wasn't given. And Alice, who had taught 2 generations of children, who had danced in the village hall, buried her mother in the local cemetery, and read stories to sick children, was quietly and without ceremony sent away. The village buzzed like a nest, poked with a stick. Someone dredged up an article, old, yellowed, buried deep in the archives of a London tabloid. The headline read, "Nanny abandons child after mother's death, nowhere to be found." There was a photo, grainy, black and white, but it was unmistakably Alice. Younger, yes, but with the same soft smile, the same eyes. Whispers turned venomous. She ran away from a child? What kind of woman leaves a baby? She lied to all of us. Alice stayed behind her cottage door, curtains drawn. Only Father Matthew came by, knocking gently every few days with groceries and soft prayers. But even he couldn't make the questions stop. And the woman, her name was Clara, stayed in the village. She rented a room above the pub and didn't speak much to anyone, but people suspected. No one had to say it aloud. She was the child, the one Alice had supposedly left. Alice sat alone with her tea and memories. Her fingers trembled as she reached into a box beneath her bed, filled with letters, hospital reports, and one haunting photograph. A baby girl with fiery red curls, born to a woman Alice had loved like a sister. She hadn't abandoned Clara. She'd been forced away. 27 years ago, Alice had been a nanny for Clara's mother, Marianne, in London. The young widow was battling cancer, and Alice stepped in to help care for the infant. They became a trio, laughing through the pain, clinging to hope. But when Marianne died, her brother, wealthy, powerful, cold, had taken guardianship of the child. "You're just the help," he'd said. "You're nothing." Alice fought, she begged, she even tried to go to court. But a single nanny had no rights, no voice. Heartbroken, she'd left London, haunted by a child's cries and her own helplessness. Now Clara had found her. It was a stormy Thursday when Clara appeared at Alice's cottage door. No makeup, just a soaked coat and trembling lips. "You really thought I wouldn't find you?" she said. Alice stepped back as if hit. Clara's eyes burned. "You let me grow up thinking you didn't care, that you just disappeared." I couldn't stay, Alice whispered. I wanted to. I tried. Your uncle, he made it impossible. You could have written. One letter. One postcard. I did, Alice said, softly. She opened the old box and handed over a stack of faded envelopes. All returned, unopened. Stamped recipient unknown. Clara sat down. Her hands shook as she flipped through them, seeing the dates, the ink smeared with time and grief. Searched for you, Alice said. I came back to London once. I saw you at a park holding a balloon. You were 5. I didn't approach. I was afraid. Afraid it would hurt you more if I showed up only to be pushed away again. Clara's expression cracked. Decades of confusion and anger clashed with a new understanding. Why didn't you tell the truth? No one would believe a nanny. Over a wealthy businessman, Alice said. And when I came here, I didn't want sympathy. I just wanted a life. To do good. To teach. To heal in some small way. The room fell silent save for the rain tapping gently against the window. I'm not proud of hiding, Alice said. But everything I did here, I did to make up for what I lost. Clara's tears finally fell. You weren't my mother, but you were the only one who ever made me feel safe. Alice took her hand, and for the first time in 3 decades, the chasm between them began to close. Clara stayed for a week. They cooked, they talked. They walked through the fields, remembering and discovering at once. The villagers noticed. Slowly, the gossip cooled. Father Matthew organized a gathering at the town hall. Not for apologies, he said, but for understanding. Alice stood in front of the people who had once revered her, and then turned their backs. I kept a secret, she said. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was broken. I left behind someone I loved, and I've carried that guilt every day. She paused, then smiled gently at Clara in the front row. I failed once, but I've spent my life trying to make that right. I ask not for forgiveness, but for the chance to be seen. Fully. There was silence. Then old Mr. Benton clapped. Then others. And when Mrs. Dalrymple stood and said, "The school board would like you to return, if you'll have us," Alice wept. Clara didn't return to London. Not right away. She began volunteering at the school, helping with art lessons. She and Alice weren't mother and daughter exactly, but something close, something honest. And the village, in its own quiet way, crowned its queen once more. Not for being flawless, but for being human.